Hi and welcome to Not So Creative. My name is Kreativ, and for today's video I was thinking about a project. So you'll know that my channel is about knitting techniques and some sewing projects and some sewing techniques. So it's been a while since I was thinking to include a tutorial on how to start knitting here in my channel. And so what a better way to learn how to knit and ending up with a garment or a project or something that you can wear or use. I think it's better when you start learning something that sticks to you and shows you what are the things you can do to improve that skill. So I was thinking about making, for today's video, a cowl. It's going to be simple. It's not going to require that much energy, and so for this video I'm gonna just show you everything I take in consideration while I'm knitting a project, while I show you the most basic techniques you're going to need. I mean, the fundamentals of knitting. So you can end up with a cowl. Just gonna show you all the measurements and all the steps I do, but I'm also going to show you all the tricks you're going to need to make the cowl you desire, with the length you want, all the creative process. I'm going to show you everything, so let's get to it. Okay, so for this project what you're going to need mainly are these objects. First, the knitting needles. These knitting needles are joined, they're circular needles, and they're joined by a cord, which is going to allow us knit in the round, which is necessary for the cowl. Another thing you're going to use are scissors, a measuring tape, one stitch marker, and one darning needle. And of course, we're going to need the yarn. I will be using this yarn, which is a thick yarn. It looks bulky, but it isn't heavy because of the way it has been spun. This is an interesting yarn because it's kind of like a net, and it has all the yarn fibers going through. It has a lot of air within it, which I believe it's going to make a nice cowl because it's going to be light, yet it's going to maintain its structure. If this is going to be like your first project, I would definitely recommend using a thick yarn and probably a light color. A light color, it's going to allow you to see the stitches way better than dark colors. Have in mind that there's always yarn labels on the skeins you buy. Usually it says the size needle you can use with this yarn. For example, in this case, it says that it's okay to use from 6 to 7 size needle. You can definitely start with this and see how it goes. Everybody has different intention while knitting, so the right needle size depends on different things like the design or the fabric you want to create. Since this is a beginner-friendly project, I'll just stick with the label suggestion. Maybe I'll go down by 1 because I do know my intention, but it's around this number. But have that in mind. Thick yarn, light color, and watch over the yarn label. Okay, so to start, we have to begin with the cast on. There are many ways to do this. I have several tutorials on my channel if you want to check them later. But today I'll show you one of the most popular and beginner-friendly methods, which is the long tail cast on. Now, for this, you have to place the ball, the yarn ball. I recommend you put it there far away from you on your right, and the tail, the end tail, will go on your left side, right? Just done so you don't mix up everything. We need to get enough tail of the yarn for the amount of stitches we need. So if you want to cast on, let's say 20 stitches, you just grab your knitting, right? Your needle, and wrap the needle the amount of stitches you need. For example, if I want to make, I don't know, I want to cast on 20 stitches, I would wrap the yarn 20 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 18, 19, 20. So this is more or less the amount of tail I need to cast on 20 stitches. Here, where I stopped, I always like to give a bit more, just a bit, just in case. So from this point, grab your yarn, place it on top of your thumb and index finger, and while creating this triangle, grab these tails with the rest of your fingers, like this, to hold that triangle there. Now with your right hand, just place the needle on top of the yarn, like this, and twist it. And that's the first stitch. Now, what you want to do is, and this is the steps that you're going to repeat over and over again for this gaston, is insert the needle upward the loop on your thumb, like this, and then catch the yarn from your index finger, like this, and pull it through the loop. Release the loop on your thumb and pull. And now you have 2 stitches on your needle. Okay, so let's go again. So basically what you're going is under this loop and pulling this yarn over to yourself, to you, like this. Under, pull. Under, pull. There are different knitting styles, but the most common ones are the English style and the continental style. I prefer using the continental style, so I'll be focusing on that one in this video and for this project. For that, I have here all the 20 cast on stitches we just did, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn our needle to the other side, like this. And we're going to hold this needle now with your left hand. You can place your working yarn on the left. It's always going to be on the left, if you're right-handed. And you're going to take the other needle on your right hand. This is going to be your working needle, okay? So, for the continental style, what you're going to do is place this yarn, the working yarn, on top of your index finger, like this, okay? And hold it with the rest of your fingers. You might find this a bit difficult, and at first you're gonna feel like the yarn is going through, it's gonna get loose and you won't have the best tension over it, and it's going to be kind of difficult, I know. But another thing I like to do is to retain tension. The way I hold my yarn is like this. I take the tail and place it on top of my index finger, and then under the middle finger, over the next one, and then wrap once, sometimes two. I wrap 2 times on the little finger, and so I can have more attention to it. Okay, it works for me. It can work for some people. It depends on your preference. So once you start knitting, you're gonna see what works best for you. So, but this is my tip for you, okay? Okay, so we have the stitches cast on, and we can now learn the knit stitch, which is the foundation of knitting, basically. Okay, for this, you need to insert your right needle from front to back into the first stitch, like this. See, this is the first stitch. And then we're going to wrap the yarn over the needle, like this. And then we're going to pull it through, and slide this first stitch off the left needle. Now the stitch went from the left needle to the right needle. Next, we have to repeat the same process over all the stitches in the row. Insert from front to back, wrap the needle, and pull it through. Second stitch, done. As you go, you're gonna find that the index finger is getting closer and closer to the needle. So this is the time you pull a bit the yarn, and you see why I have the tension here in my fingers, because then it won't go so easy. Just the necessary amount. Then we keep working. Front to back, wrap the yarn, wrap the needle, and pull. Front to back, wrap the needle, pull it through, slide off the stitch. Now that you've finished your first row of knit stitches, what we're going to do is turn your needle again and place it on your left hand. So the working yarn is still on your left hand, and the working needle, it's going to be, which is the one that doesn't have the stitches, it's going to be on your right hand. It is time to learn the second basic stitch, which is the purl stitch. Now this stitch is trickier. It's for most knitters, but you'll get there. You see, you have to place your tail as before, right? But this time we're going to place the yarn, working yarn, in front of your work. You see? It's not coming from the back as for the knit stitch, but for this stitch, for the purl, we're going to place the yarn on the front. So when you pull the yarn, you're going to make the stitch go upward. You don't want that. So what I recommend is using your middle finger and pull the yarn a bit down so you can see to regain control over that. Or just don't pull the yarn too much. This is only for the first stitch. Once you start working on, you won't be doing this, okay? Okay, now we need to insert the right needle from back to front into the stitch. If you want, you can, with your right index, you can just hold it there just to secure it, and then wrap the needle with the yarn, okay? Again, use your middle finger if you want to pull the yarn down and so tighten the wrap on the needle. And then you're going to pull that yarn through the stitch like this. And as before, we're going to slide off the stitch on the left needle. This is the first stitch. It's a bit trickier, I know, but it's not impossible. You just need practice. Okay, so again, let's place the yarn in front of your work, as before, and insert the needle from back to front, wrap the needle, and pass it through the loop, like this. Slide off the stitch, and now we have our second stitch. Front, yarn on front of your work, insert the needle, back to front, wrap the yarn around the needle, pull it through the loop, slide off the stitch. Let's go on again. Just make sure that the working yarn is always in the front of your work for the purl stitch. Okay, so here's done, the first purl row. Now, I want to show you something. How you can identify these stitches on your knitting. You see, here is the finished purl row. And as you can see, it has lots of bumps. Once you create a purl stitch, you're going to find these little bumps on your stitches. Usually, this is considered like the wrong side of the fabric. The purl stitch is the opposite to the knit stitch. So the way to identify the knit stitches are these V's. Each V corresponds to one knit stitch, which is the opposite to the purl stitch, that are bumps. This side is considered usually as the right side of the fabric. If you want to continue practicing, what I recommend is every time you see the V's, you go the row, you do this row, all knit stitches. And when you have to work on this side, just purl all the way to the end, okay? Okay, so before we start the actual project, let's talk about swatching. A swatch is a small knitted sample using the same yarn and needle and a stitch pattern. Its purpose is to check your gauge, which is the number of stitches and rows in 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters square, or 4 inches by 4. The standard measure is 10 by 10, but you can make it even bigger. The bigger the sample is, the more accurate the count is going to be, okay? Why do we do this? Because every knitter's tension is different, and skipping this step can mean your project ends up too loose or too tight, or even the wrong size. Think of it like testing a recipe before making the full cake. It's not the most pleasant part of the knitting process, but it has to be done if it is possible, okay? Once you get done to 20 stitches, what we're going to do is knit 1 row, purl 1 row, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, always checking which is the front and the right side and the wrong side of the fabric, okay? Okay, so once you're done with the sample, with the swatch, we need to bind off the stitches so we can take the swatch off the knitting needle. Because if we take it off right now, it's going to unravel, okay? So to start the bind off, we're gonna knit the first 2 stitches. Just knit. Knit 1 and knit the second stitch. Now what we're going to do is pass the first stitch we just knit like this with the left needle. We're gonna pass this loop over the second stitch we knit. And so the first stitch is done. Cool, huh? Try not to pull the yarn too tight. I mean, just try to tie it up, but just don't pull too much. You don't want to deform the fabric and you don't want to have a tight bind off, okay? Now, we need the next stitch and the previous stitch. We're just going to pull it with the left needle and pull it over the new stitch, just like that. Quite simple, huh? Knit the next stitch, pass the stitch over. So you can see I'm not pulling the working yarn, at least not that much. I mean, I'm keeping my tension. This thing is not loose or too tight. It's just enough to maintain control over the working yarn. Knit the next stitch, slide the previous over the new stitch. So you continue doing this until all the stitches are bound off. When you get to the last stitch, what you have to do is grab your scissors and just cut the working yarn. And then pull the yarn. Now that we finished the swatch, we have to block it. What this basically means is that we have to wash and dry our swatch the same way our final project will be treated. This will always depend, of course, on the composition of the fabric. For example, if it is an acrylic or maybe cotton fabric, we might be able to throw the piece to the washing machine. But in the case of animal fibers, like wool, that is not recommended, essentially because it can felt. In my case, the yarn I will use for this project is mainly alpaca, which is too delicate for the washing machine. So I will water block my swatch. For this, what I have to do is pour some tap water on a bowl. Have in mind that the water should not be hot. Add some detergent. There are some that are specific for wool, but you can actually add the same you use in your washing machine. Just get one detergent at least for delicate fibers in this case. Then place the swatch in and squeeze it under the water to take out all the air within the fibers and let it rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. That should do it. After this time, take the swatch, squeeze the water out of it and place it on a towel. Then press it so we remove all excess of water in it. Then let it dry on a flat surface. I like using these mats. These are quite cheap. I got mine even in the supermarket. But if you don't have one or you don't want to acquire one, it's okay. You can just leave it on the floor or maybe just place it on top of a dry towel. That will do it too. Once your swatch is dry, place a ruler or your measuring tape across 10 centimeters on your swatch and count the stitches. Each V is one stitch. What I like to do is identify the first column I am going to start counting from and then mark it with the darning needle, just like this. What you can see here is that I get 15.5 stitches in 10 centimeters. Write this down, we're going to need it later. Next, we need to determine our cowl final measure. Okay, so for the measurement, we're just going to take our measuring tape and just measure our necks. Just put it around. You can do it two ways, okay? You can do it in 2 ways. You can just measure your neck, like right there on top of it, about 40 centimeters or so. And then you can just add up the ease you want. Let's say, I don't know, I get 40 and then I'll just add 20 centimeters, more or less, 40. Yeah, so 60. I will have this circumference. It's going to be enough for me to get out. That's an important thing. Just have in mind that the circumference has to be wider than your head, the widest part of your head, which will be, if I'm using glasses, for example, I could say probably that this is my wider side. But that's pretty much the case. You just have to analyze what circumference you want. For example, for me, I want something that's close to an infinity scarf, but not so big. I mean, I wanted to be able to just sit and rest in my neck, just to have some warmth on my back, the back of my neck, maybe until my belly button. Is it called that? Belly button? Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll go for that. And if I want that, I would have to measure like this. And my belly button is in here, so I get, pretty much 100 centimeters. So yeah, I think I'll go with 100. I think it feels right for me. And maybe, I don't know, but with the stitch pattern we're making, there's going to be a lot of a stretchiness. This pattern is stretch enough, I believe, for making 100 centimeters circumference. I might be able to twist it and get it close to my cowl. So yeah, I think that's going to allow me that. I believe so. We'll see. Now that we have determined the desired length of our circumference, we can calculate how many stitches we need to cast on so we can start our project. So here comes the math, with just a simple rule of 3. Based on my swatch, if 10 centimeters is equivalent to 15.5 stitches, so I can ask this question: how many stitches would I need to cast on so I can get a 100 centimeter circumference? To solve this, we just simply multiply 100 by 15.5 and then divide the result by 10. The result, in my case, is 155. What you have to do is simply substitute all your numbers with this formula. Multiply and divide. It's simple. And that's the number of stitches we're going to cast on. Okay, so now that we have covered the basics, it's time to start the project, the cowl, finally. Now, we did calculate the amount of stitches we need to cast on, so let's cast on them so we can proceed to create our beautiful cowl. Now remember, as I said before, try to wrap around the needle as many stitches you need to cast on, okay? Now that you have cast on the last stitch, we should start knitting in the round. For this, the next stitch then should be on your left needle. This is going to be a bit different than working before, because what we used to do, and the example for the basics, is turning the needle to the other side and start working on the wrong side of the fabric. But in this occasion, we are not going to turn our needle. We should finish casting on in this needle, and we are going to join and start working on the next needle, right? So to do so, there are a couple of things you need to have in mind, okay? First of all, you need to make sure that the stitches are not twisted, and this is crucial, because if the stitches are twisted and you continue working in the round, you're you will only notice this once you have made a couple of rows, okay? A couple of rounds. And that's not a good thing because there's no way to fix it. The only way to fix it is undoing the entire work, okay? Until this point. If you see here, the needles have the loops on the needle, right? And there's these little loops on the bottom of the needle. Now, because this is a cable, the stitches can start making this twists, and you don't want to work over that, and this can be translated in here in the beginning too. So to make sure that's not happening, just lay it flat on a surface and just verify that the bumps are inward the circle. You see, here's always inward, the loops are there are no twists, everything stays flat. If it was twisted, it would look like this. You would just notice that there is something going on, you see? So we make sure that the bumps are inside, facing inward the circle all the way, okay? And now we can just take our working yarn like this, right? So now the working yarn is on the right needle. And now we need to work on this first stitch. Before joining in the round, what we need to do is grab our stitch marker and place it on the right needle. So this will mark the beginning of the round, okay? We can make different things on each round, so this will set the starting point. Now, we have to, based on the pattern for this cowl, we're gonna work 3 rounds of knit stitch and then 3 rounds of purl stitch. Of course, if you want to vary, change the pattern, it's okay, it depends on you. If you feel like you don't want to do purl 3 rounds, you can just knit the entire garment, it won't matter, that's your decision. But for the final project I'm showing, this pattern is going to be 3 rounds of knitting stitches and 3 rounds of purling, okay? So the first round will be a knit stitch, as we did before. Always the first stitch is the most difficult. Once you make the first stitch, make sure that you pull the yarn so the first stitch stays close to the last one, okay? And continue. And this is how you join in the round, okay? Quite simple. It's not difficult at all. So now what we have to do is knit the entire thing, okay? So what happens if, for example, your cord is, let's say, too big? If it is too big, then probably the amount of stitches won't cover the entire cord and the needle, so it's going to be a bit off. If you find that happening, what you can do is use a technique that's called the magic loop method, which is simply getting the opposite of where you're working with and just pull the cord in between 2 stitches and pull it through. This will shorten the cord, and so it makes it easier to pull the stitches to your needles and reduce the space on them, okay? So you can just work easier. Once you reach the magic loop that we did before, you're gonna have the needle like away like this. So what you have to do is extend your work over the cord, right? As before. And again, it's going to be easier later. And then place the stitches on the needle, right? Okay, and then what you have to do is, again, pull the loop between 2 stitches on the opposite side, and so you can place the stitches a bit closer, okay? Just continue knitting. Okay, so once you reach the stitch marker, you have completed your first round. Cool, huh? Did you enjoy it? So now, this is all you need. All these techniques is everything you need just to continue with it. Now, at first, in this first round, you might notice this bit of a gap. It's okay, it's normal, and it's going to get better once you go for more rounds. And by the end of the project, I'll show you how to get rid of it. Based on the pattern, we need to repeat this row 2 more times. So we need to knit 2 more rows, okay? So let's start. Let's go with it. After 3 rounds of knitting, we're gonna complete 3 rounds of purling. So, as we learned before, we're gonna have a start purling. So we're going to repeat this 3 knitting rounds and 3 purling rounds until the cowl measures around 30 centimeters, starting from the cast on, okay? Or your desired length if you want it to be. You can stop whenever you feel like it's enough for you, okay? So I have advanced all this way, but I have run out of yarn. So I need to start working with a new skein of yarn or a new ball of yarn. And for this, I just have to find the tail of the new ball, the new skein, and just place it in my hand as I was supposed to work with it, right? This is the tail of the work that I've been working. I'm just gonna put it down aside, and I'm gonna take the new skein and just start knitting or purling or whatever. It's gonna be a bit tricky. Try not to pull because this tail is loose. So if you pull, you're just going to undo the stitch, okay? We will fix this later after the project is all bind off. I'll explain to you how to do that part, how to get rid of these tails. And now that the skein is joined, you can just continue working with it. Okay, so I just finished my second ball of yarn, and this is what it got me. So I'm gonna leave it this and this tool. If you want to bind off your project and you just stopped, you just did a knit row, you finish with a knit row, then you can do that of knitting 2 stitches, passing the previous stitch over the second one, and so on and so on. You can do that, but that's only if you finished on a knit round. But I didn't finish with a knit round, okay? I finished with all these purls. So I'm gonna start binding off purls. If that's your case, I'm gonna remove the stitch marker because we're not gonna need it anymore. But it's pretty much the same thing. Just the only difference is that you're not going to start knitting the first 2 stitches because they're purls. So I'm gonna purl the first 2 stitches, and then I'm gonna pass the first purl stitch over the second one. And how much tail do you think you need to leave for binding off? Because you don't, as the cast on, you don't want to run out of yarn, of tail yarn, while you're binding off. Well, if that's the case, what I recommend is that if you see that you're running out of yarn, you can just place your project like this and then just calculate the circumference, how much from one side to the other, how much is that circumference, right? And you need to have at least, I would say 3 times, just to be sure, at least 3 times of the 3 to 4 times this amount, this circumference available in your working yarn. Okay, so here I have my cowl, my beautiful cowl done, and there's only one more step that has to be done, and that is weaving in the ends. So how do we do that? And that's simple. We're just going to use a darning needle. So for the cast on is quite simple. We're just gonna thread our needle The idea of weaving the ends is just hide them in between, right? Just try to assimilate the stitch pattern you're watching. For example, in here, I like to just pull the thread just to see where it goes. And you see here, the stitches are, here's the V, here's one stitch, and there's another stitch in here. You see, this is the gap where we were joining in the round, so it got like too long, too big. So the idea here is to close a bit more of this gap. So what you can do, and this is just like not a law, I mean, this is what I like to do, and you can do it whatever you feel like doing it, but what I like to do is just to get my darning needle and stick it to the next stitch to close this gap. You see, my yarn tail is coming from here, so I go to the opposite side and then just place it there so I can just pull and close that gap, you see? So after that, I'll just go back and follow this gap, you know, to close it, and go to the stitch where my yarn tail was coming from, and then I can just close it up, and there you have it. You have just closed that gap. Okay, so here you can do whatever you want. I mean, what I like to do is just follow the pattern. If I stretch the yarn, I can see that here are the V's, right? So what I like to do is just, this is a loop, you see? This is a loop, and I just try to follow that loop. For example, here I come from the stitch on the top, like this, and then I'll just pass the yarn through that, right? And then what I do is follow that stitch, which comes from here top, and then go back, and then it goes into this two legs, right? And then it goes up again into this stitch, that's pretty much for everything. But here, where we join the yarn, we have a hole, right? We have a big hole. So the idea here is just to pull a bit the yarn on both sides. And what you're going to do is with the right, with one, you pick up one side, and then you're gonna thread it to the opposite side. If I take the right side, I'll go to the left, and with the left, I'll go to the right. And I will be inserting the darning needle on the loop where the left tail is coming from. You see here, this is coming from this little loop. So I'll be getting inside this, and I'll follow the yarn. It comes from here and it goes to the left. Alright, so that's for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I just covered all the things you need to do to start and finish a knitting project, or at least this one, the least complex one. I do know for experience that after finishing all these rounds, so many rounds of knitting and purling, I know you're gonna end up with a better tension. Maybe if this is your first project, you're gonna end up with a weird shape of the cowl, like it's not going to be exactly, you know, straight up. Maybe it's going to be too tight at the beginning and then too loose at the end, or vice versa, you know. It could happen because once you start building muscle memory, your attention is going to get more even and even time, and you're going to understand way more on how to maintain that tension, right? And learn more skills. Don't be afraid of them. Just maybe you can just try creating another, starting another project, another cowl, but maybe with, I don't know, casting on a different method, maintaining the same stitch pattern, maybe binding up to a different method, maybe just doing a stockinette stitch, all knitting in the round. You know, you can do a lot of modifications to this simple project, or maybe even make it longer. For example, I was aiming for this. I managed to do it. I invented this scarf that matches my neck, which is great. Don't worry if you don't get the exact design you wanted for your first garment, for your first try. Just try to make it again. If that doesn't matter, if you don't like it and you just feel like, you're not going to wear it, you just can unravel and start again. That's the magic of knitting. There's no lethal mistake in creating something. So let me know down there in the comments also if you have any other doubt that I might not cover, so I can just help you out. I'll do my best to help you out and finish the project. So yeah, so I think that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did, making this video for you. Happy knitting, and I'll see you in the next video.